Hey, we've been talking all week about coaching support. That's right, the support of coaching. And today we're going to tackle the number one thing I thought and I hear about coaching support all the time. It costs too much. We're going to take on that challenge. We're going to talk about maybe it does cost too much in some cases, maybe it doesn't. We're going to cover that and a whole lot more on episode 814 of today's Antidote.
Stay tuned for today's Antidote, brought to you by the Renegade Success Network. Today's Antidote features a healthy dose of thought-provoking insights and information for business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders, and nonprofit professionals. Each day since March of 2020, this program has offered that one thing to help you continue on your own unique pathway to success. And now, Renegades, we bring you Bob Graham and Tom Brush.
Hey, Tom, how are you?
I'm well. How are you doing today, Bob?
I'm excited because this is one of my favorite topics. No kidding.
Really?
This is a big one to me.
Why is that? Or do we have to hold on to wait?
No. This comes up so often, and so I'm excited. It's the elephant in the room as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, cool, interesting.
All right.
Everything else going all right?
Everything's good except my background is missing today. I updated my software and my background disappeared. So if I didn't blur the background, you'd see a whole bunch of boxes and yeah, not good. That's project number one for the next 3 days is to empty out some boxes. But I have a really bad habit that I've got to cure.
What is that?
My bad habit is I just put stuff in places where I don't see it, rather than organizing it. And so at the penthouse, I have a whole bunch of great storage space. It's like there's more shelving than I could ever imagine. I am guilty so far of just throwing. I had to find the word. I was looking for a different word. Throwing stuff in places as opposed to going, oh, this would be an organized place to put games. And this would be a really nice place to put this. And I've been called on this now twice because a person who has a pretty active role in my life went into the closet to hang up a jacket, and there were golf clubs, there was a dolly, there was all kinds of stuff like right at the door of a beautiful walk-in closet. So it's like, you need to get this sorted out, and rightfully so. I'm also building a desk. I'm building a stand-up desk. That project started last night.
Cool.
It's a work in progress. So I got a lot going on. Busy weekend. And now I hear it's going to rain tomorrow, which is great because my golf clubs were calling me. So,
well, after the last couple of days in Maryland, I could understand.
Yes,
beautiful.
Yes. It's been beautiful.
Excellent.
And you've got a big lacrosse game tomorrow.
I have a lacrosse game tomorrow. Yes.
Little Tommy Brush doing more Division A games, moving up that ladder of lacrosse.
What's Division A?
Or, I'm sorry, Division One. Sorry. Division One.
It's a game. I'm not going to put an adjective in the front of it.
For those of you at home that don't follow Tom and his officiating of women's and girls lacrosse, Tom has moved up over the years that I've known him from doing a lot of local games to more regional games, higher and higher levels. And Division One lacrosse, I had to get it straight in my head.
Almost did it again.
I almost did. In the NCAA is serious. These are the good teams. It's Georgetown tomorrow. And who are they playing?
Villanova.
These are like, this is big time. This is like ACC basketball or SEC football. In your field, this is what it is.
No, I wouldn't say that.
It is.
I'm not going to go there. Like everything else, it's a game. If I say it's a big game, I'll get nervous and do whatever. It's another game. Field's the same size. Rules are the same. It's a game.
Will you be a little nervous tomorrow?
No, I don't think so.
Is it televised?
I'm sure it's depends on how you define televised. I think
could I see it on ESPN or ESPN 8 or ESPN 47?
You might be able to see it on ESPN on the web somewhere. I don't know.
Okay.
It's funny how people define televised. It's not. I was probably more nervous. I was at the Naval Academy 2 weeks ago, and I was probably a little more nervous then.
At their
The
stadium?
stadium is beautiful.
Oh yeah, that would be intimidating when you
Yeah,
see all the battle locations on the
And
Yes.
it was impossible to find the possession clock. It was like typically it's goal level on the field. This was like way up on the scoreboard. It was just not like a place you would ever look. So that was a little distracting. So,
the challenges of an official.
correct. But that's not what we're here to talk about.
No.
We're here to talk about today's Antidote, our daily broadcast and podcast where each week we have a conversation around a topic. This week's topic, as Bob mentioned in his opening, is around coaching support. We've been talking about support all month, all the different ways that we get support as we try to travel our own unique pathway to success. And this week we're talking about the support of a coach and what that looks like. Today we're going to dive into it costs too much. And if you're wondering, in the past, Fridays were always reserved for discoveries of the week. Well, last week we started to change things up a little bit. And so now
I think it was 2 weeks ago we started.
Oh, was it 2 weeks ago? All right. We're doing things a little bit different. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. It costs too much.
But if you have a discovery from the week, feel free to put it in the comments, right?
Of course.
We can't stop you. We welcome your discoveries, whether it's around our topic or something else.
Yes. And, and I think part of this all as it comes to Friday is anyway, it's going to be a little bit of discoveries because when you talk about something for 5 days in a row, there's things you're going to shift likely. So as we go through that conversation, if you have thoughts or ideas you want to share, please feel free to put them in the comments. And then at the end of the conversation, Bob and I will each offer our one thing, our today's antidote, that thing that we hope will help you figure out what next step to take when you might be frustrated, stuck, overwhelmed, or just uncertain about what to do next, because that can happen easily, almost too easily. And of course, if you have your one thing, please feel free to share it, because if you share it, somebody might actually hear it, even though they've been told it before, or they've been around the idea before, they may not have actually truly heard it. So please feel free to share your value. Before we dive into our conversation, though, each morning, what was that look of concern?
I was just looking. My setup is different today, and I'm trying to figure out why. I can't see the normal things I see. So I just all of a sudden realized that I was a guest, not a host. So I guess I've been demoted.
I don't think I did that. I think that was something.
I think it was self-created, yes.
Yeah, you just had this. So for those on the podcast, Bob had this weird look on his face, like something was wrong. And, I figured I maybe misspoke or talked about the wrong topic or something like that. Either way, before we dive into our conversation, and before Bob puts another weird face in that I notice, we each morning do celebrations. So Bob, what are you celebrating today? Clearly, it's not going to be about your setup.
No, I have a button, so I'll tell you exactly what's going on. I have a button that says stream this to your audience that I've never seen before. And I'm curious if I should take the leap and see what happens. So I'm distracted by that button. It's big and blue and right in front of my face. You know,
probably
shiny object syndrome right there in front of me.
Shocking. That was so attractive to you.
I was talking to someone I coached last night, and I said to her, she's like, I'm prone to shiny objects. And she said, I have a list I wanted to run by you. And I thought, maybe 2 or 3. We've just started working together. She had 13 items on that list. And at least 7 of them were ones that were on my list. No kidding.
Maybe you're going to be a really good coach for her. Been down that pathway once or twice.
A day.
I didn't want to say that. It's just once or twice.
So I'm going to celebrate the beautiful weather. I got to the last 2 evenings, I've been able to sit out on my balcony and enjoy beautiful weather, quiet surroundings. Read a book last night a little bit, had a meeting out on my balcony last night, made dinner for someone the night before. Really enjoying. This is the beautiful time of year in Maryland before it gets oppressively hot. And it's just very nice. There were cardinals that were flying by and Canada geese. There were some deer.
Wow.
you can only imagine what my cat was going through with all that. I don't think he'd ever seen deer before. So pretty big day.
At least he
In
didn't
cat
eat.
world, that if he were here, he'd be celebrating they got to see a white-tailed deer. Now, I have a quick story about white-tailed deer. There is a preserve down in Florida that I've been to now twice, and they have all these animals that are in the wild that they preserve because they've been hurt in some way. They have a display for a white-tailed deer, and they make a big deal. Like, you can see a white-tailed deer here in Florida, and you go up to look at it. I've seen these on the side of the road. I've seen this in the road. I've seen this in the backyard. I've seen this everywhere up here. But down in Florida, a white-tailed deer is like seeing a manatee would be to us in Baltimore. Just not something that happens. So it's kind of funny because people are like, oh, look, a white-tailed deer. Oh, wow. Like, yeah, got 40 million of those within about a mile of me at any given time.
Correct.
I'm trying to avoid them. And you're going to look at them.
Most importantly,
yes,
with your cat, avoid them.
Yes. So that's my celebration. How about you today?
So my celebration is a conversation I had with a client yesterday, who is really finding some clarity around some of the things and I gave him a little homework assignment that they worked on, and I think it really helped them see how they could actually achieve something that they weren't so certain that they could achieve just by laying it out and trying to put a timeline to it. And and I know that the potential hazard there is that they look ahead. Although I really tried to have that conversation with, okay, now that you've done that, set all of it aside except for the first step. And let's just focus on getting to the first step at the time you want to get to the first step. And I think that was a helpful realization for them. And at the same time, we had a couple of conversations about two clients that he might be lining up, and just some of his communication interaction. And so I'm celebrating the the progress that they've made in continuing to do this one thing that they're very passionate about, while also being able to continue to grow their business. And to me, that's, I think, as you know, that's one of the things that I value about having my own business, is that I can also chase down some other passions that I have, like officiating girls and women's lacrosse.
Can I ask you a couple questions about that situation? And if you, I don't want you to divulge anything you can't divulge. So just feel free to say I can't answer that. But had this person been working on trying to solve the things that you helped them figure out on their own?
I'm going to say yes and no.
Okay.
Yes, in that it has always been around. No, I'm not sure they ever took some of the steps that we took before.
Okay.
Because I think
so you got ahead of the potential situation, help them see what was coming up, and help them figure out how to move through it before it became a real potential challenge. Is that right?
Actually, I think that it was more of a dream that we started talking about making reality. And I know we've done some conversations around that, is that, taking our dreams and desires and actually putting them down on paper and trying to figure out, like, what is the process. And I think along the way, I remember we had this conversation around, you at one point, a beach house was like your ideal dream thing. Now you're in a penthouse beach house. And
as long as it has house in it,
when we went through that,
have a backyard, I'm good.
When we went through that process, you realized you were further along than you thought, and that it was actually doable. And I think this was kind of what it was as well, is that it had been this thing out there that they had spent a lot of time thinking about, and I'm not sure they really got it out of the thought process and into the action process.
And this person volunteered this to you yesterday, that they had this move forward on this, or you initiated, or how?
It was some homework that I gave them.
Okay.
They had shared with me how this had moved up in their priority list.
Okay.
And yet they couldn't really figure out, and not only moved in their priority list, they actually had a timeline by which they wanted to complete it.
And
weren't certain that the timeline was doable. That was the
okay.
So yeah, it was some homework that I had asked them to
Because
work on.
I think that's the discussion we're having today. That to me is a great example of where coaching is invaluable. When we talk about, and I hear all the time from people, I said in the opening, oh, coaching just costs too much. I can't pay my bills. How am I going to pay you? How am I going to pay someone to help me get where I want to go? But the fact of the matter is, and you and I both have done this, we've invested a fair amount of money. Yesterday, we were calculating how much we had spent on coaching money over the last couple of years. It was in the 5 figures, legit 5 figures for each of us separately, I think.
Sure.
And I don't regret any of that, because I think what it did for me, even though that cost was it's a stressor some days, I'm not well aware of it some days, but I also know that it has accelerated my ability to achieve things. And it's given me insight into things that I know I couldn't have seen or resolved on my own. And I'll give you a great example. I used to look at the whole sales process as really like used car salesman kind of thing, like just a negative. And I've really come to a place where I don't even think about sales. I just have discussions. And you and I do networking events. They're very similar. It's not about tell me exactly what you do and how can you sell. What are you selling to me today? It's more like, hey, what kind of person are you? Let's build the character and talk through it. And I think I wouldn't have gotten through that were it not for coaching saying, hey, it's okay to not be the hardcore salesperson. Yes, there's a time and place to offer the person a product or service. Yes. But it doesn't have to be the first thing out of your mouth. And it doesn't have to be driven. And I think for me, the beauty of the coach that was able to help me customize those traditional solutions of how you do sales with what works for me and say, you know what, Bob, your way, molding these two together can be really powerful. I couldn't have gotten there on my own, because everyone was saying you have to go in and you've got to have a certain number of calls a day. You've got to make sure that within the first 5 minutes you're saying this, and you've got an agreement about this. And that works in some cases. Don't get me wrong, but it doesn't work for me. And I think coaching, that cost of getting a coach to help me figure out how to solve that so it worked for me, really, I couldn't put a dollar sign on that, because now today, I've got a day today where I've got probably 40 people I need to try to contact. I'm not dreading that. And if you go back 2-3 years, I can remember a day where I spent the whole day doing that, and I dreaded every single moment of it.
Mm-hmm.
I'd call and be like, hi, this is Bob. Do you have a minute to talk to me? Now I'm just like, hey, Bob, this is Bob. What's going on? And it fits me. And I think that's where, when we talk about coaching costing too much, I would turn it around and say, what's it costing you not to have coaching in your life? Because for me, the cost of not having a coach is I get stuck more often. I get slowed down a lot, and I get in my head. And the worst place I can be a lot of the time is in my head, because it's a spiral downward. I can take the simplest thing and turn it into a bigger thing and a bigger thing. And before I know it, it's Thursday afternoon, and I've spun into full-fledged overwhelm. I can't do this. What was I thinking? I need to go. I give up, which leads to a Friday where it's like, you know what? I give up. I'm out for Friday. Right. Let me find anything I can do not to do the thing I need to do. I see Michael's got a comment here. You want to add it in? Go ahead.
Sure.
I can't, because I'm a mere participant today.
Fair enough. You're a guest.
I will read it, though, if I may. Michael says, good morning, Michael, by the way. Coaching may appear to be pricey. However, think of it as a fancy spa treatment for your brain. Ooh, we need to steal that, Tom. You'll leave feeling refreshed, rejuvenated, and ready to take on the world. It is worth it, and business must be good, because I don't live in a penthouse. Smile, grin.
Yes, Bob is moving on up. He went from the bunker.
You made my day, Michael. We'll talk about it.
To a penthouse. Pretty good. Well, I think, one of the interesting thing is, I think, it's funny when you were mentioning how much we've invested in that. I don't really, I think about it. I think about it on the other side, is what's the value that I've gotten in return. And to me, that's the piece of it, is the value that you get out of it. Now, obviously, there are times when you go through a coaching situation and it just doesn't, for whatever reason, it maybe doesn't take the way you thought it would. Now, as I would always say, results change. And you may realize down the road that something that they said that you thought at the time wasn't as valuable became something extremely valuable to where you are. I think it though provides an opportunity for you to see, like, and Carol had this comment earlier in the week that if people didn't hear it, I want to share it, is that it helps us get where we want to get quicker. And I know that for me is absolutely the case. And I'm not sure I could put a price on the value of being able to be where I am in my business if not for, the coaching that I had. I mean, there are multiple things that I think back of, but that are critical pieces of how I do business that I gained because I was a part of some sort of coaching program that I'm not certain I would have ever picked up, or I probably could have picked it up. It would have taken me a lot longer to figure it out. And I think that was sort of Carol's comment, is like, how quickly do you want to try to see the changes that you want to make? And what's the value of getting those results? Again, sometimes I look back and think, man, I got to steal.
Right.
For the value that, for the way that is currently impacting my business and the things it's allowed me to do. I'm not sure I could put a price on it. It reminds me of the story. Have you heard the story about the guy who worked for 40 years in a factory running a machine?
Yes.
And it was his job to manage the machine for 40 years. And he got paid whatever his salary was. He was another employee, decides to retire. 5 days later, the machine breaks down. And of course, the machine is as old as the guy at least had been in the office. So it's 40 plus years. There's nobody who knows how to service it. And so they call him up and say, hey, we're having this problem with the machine. Can you come and fix it? And he comes down, and in 5 minutes it's fixed. And they're like, okay, just send us an invoice. And he sends them an invoice for $10,000. And they're like, what? You were here for 5 minutes. Says, yeah, but I have 40 years of experience, and I was able to get you up and running again in 5 minutes where no one else could have done it that day, probably the next couple of days. And so what I had to share allowed you to get back to where you wanted to be a lot faster, or get to where you wanted to be a lot faster. And I think that's the piece we forget about. Again, we think about it as a cost so often. And I remember being the same way, stressing over making some decisions to invest in coaching or any other investment in my business, and not thinking about what is the return that this is going to bring, and how is this going to help me get to somewhere that I want to be a lot quicker and in a different manner than I might have ever been if I was trying to do it on my own. So I think that ties back into what you say, is like, what will it either cost you, or what value will you miss out on because you are trying to feel like you're doing it based only on your knowledge, experience, and perspective.
Well, and if you think about it, Tom, the point about the value over the cost really is apparent, because yesterday was the first time you and I had really talked about how much money we had invested. Like, literally, you couldn't pull that number. I couldn't pull that number. We had to think about it for a couple of minutes, because that wasn't relevant. The value was relevant. If someone said to me, hey, you've invested in coaching, I'd talk about the great things it's brought me. I'm firmly convinced your coaching style was heavily influenced by that first coaching program you went through.
Oh, sure.
I think a very clear line between that and how you go about coaching. So a big chunk of your revenue is directly tied to what you experienced. And I know it's the same for me. So
yeah, I mean, I would say that I clearly remember. I mean, I'll never forget this. I went away to a 3-day retreat after I had been in a program, because I spent 5 months trying to figure out how to manage the CRM and email and website and all that nonsense.
It's not nonsense until you realize you can't do it.
Correct. It's nonsense when you look back and be like, wait, you mean there was another way that I could have done this that would have saved me a lot of time, effort, and energy? Yeah, that would have been helpful. I wish I had found it 5 months ago and I hadn't stopped and been like, huh. I think that was like, I don't know, $800 for a 6-week program. And I was like, that might have been some of the best money I ever spent.
Yeah.
But I walked away from this conference that it was a follow-up to that and came up with a step-by-step process. And that step-by-step process has held true and been the basis of a lot of my work since that time frame. I go back to it all the time when I think about and do strategic planning or any sort of planning or any sort of thinking about the process is exactly what I mapped out on the plane home from that I had started to work on as a part of that process. And I think that's, those are the things that I turn back to and see, like, here's where I see the value of it. And I think that if you're only looking at the cost, you're missing out on what might I gain from this. Even at the end, I've invested in some that I've questioned. And most of the time I've questioned myself. Did I really put as much of myself into this as I could have? And I think some of that was probably based on what the investment was in it.
And it's also your timing and
Sure.
and I think sometimes you get stretched. The coaching program you and I are doing around some advertising marketing has really stretched us.
Sure.
We've been having some hard discussions every day, and it's like, oh, really?
Discussions.
They've been hard for me, but that's okay.
No,
I see
Michael
Michael's got some more comments.
Yes. My first is value in terms of personal professional growth is priceless. Absolutely. Anytime we,
Amen.
and I think one of the challenges is that if we are open to it, we can get a lot of coaching in the general world. I just don't think we think of it that way. We don't think of the impact that what people have to say on us and how it impacts other parts of our lives. We might think about it in relation to whatever the specific situation is, but like, well, if I took this and applied this as a part, my friend said this about something, golf related, lacrosse related, something else, that I'm like, if I spent the time to consider it as something that might actually be valuable somewhere else.
And can't the cost also be the time it takes? I mean, I have a couple of people who are incredibly wise, but to get to the nugget of wisdom from them might be 2-3 hours of discussion. But that one nugget on the way home, it's like, whoa.
Right. It was well worth it.
So the cost could be time. The cost could be, effort, right? We're going through some stuff now where the support we're getting is requiring us to do a lot of work to get there, but the payoff is huge.
Yeah. And I think I like this from Michael: investing in your own growth and development can pay dividends for years to come. And I think that's, I'm going to jump in, and I don't usually do this, and I'm going to do this. That's, I think, is my one thing, is that, when you think about cost, you think about it in the moment. You don't necessarily think about it in the value that it provides spread out over time. Again, if I go back and look at that one process that I was able to walk away with from that 3-day event, and how many times I've used that process with clients, the return on investment of that initial program was well more than 100 times what the cost was. And I think that's the piece that we don't always think about. We think about, wow, that seems like a lot of money in the moment. And we don't think about, well, okay, what's the long-term value of this going to be? And how will that have an impact on who I am, how I run my business, and how I'm able to do things that I didn't think I had an issue with. I remember a conversation where someone had called me, emailed me while I was in the middle of a program, and we were doing an in-person thing. And they were like, hey, I'm looking for somebody, this is a nonprofit, to help us with a strategic plan. Do you know anybody? And so I shared it with one of the coaches at the event, and I was like hemming and hawing about what I was going to write back. And their comment was, why don't you just write back, well, that's what I do. And I'd be happy to talk to you a little bit about what that looks like. And because they're like, could you do that? And I was like, yeah. I haven't done it with a client. This was early on. I haven't done it with a client yet. I had done it in my own professional life. And they're like, well, if that's the case, why don't you just tell them that? And sure enough, I did. And as it turns out, I landed that client.
And you've done a number of strategic plans and workshops around them, and it's a big
Right.
chunk of your business now, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so I think that's part of the piece we miss out on. I there's just lots of times when I have had a coach, some paid and some not, or they were paid in different ways, that have provided me insights that have definitely stuck with me for a long time. And the value of that is well worth whatever it has been to get that type of support. And it has allowed me to achieve my goals definitely faster than I otherwise think I would have.
I'm going to go in a different direction on my one thing. And
Yes.
that is, the cost question isn't really about the dollars and cents. It's really not about the value. It's about whether you believe in yourself. Every time I've invested in money in coaching, there's been a gut check moment where I'm like, oh God, I got to make this work. Oh, how am I going to make this work? And that's a moment that really defines for me how serious I am about what I'm trying to do. Because suddenly it goes from talk and theory to a reality. Like, this coach is saying to me, I can help you get where you want to go. I see a pathway for you. And that can be scary. If you're constantly looking to see white-tailed deer, and someone says, and you've been looking for years, and suddenly someone says, hey, you know what? If you go down this path with me, I promise you, as much as a person can promise, you should see a white-tailed deer. Well, suddenly all those years of thinking and dreaming and wishing and what will happen and how will I take the picture of the deer when I see it and what am I going to do after I see that deer? Now my quest is over. And now I've seen a white-tailed deer. What am I going to look for next? A fox, a rabbit, a chicken? And I think often we get in that place where it's like, if I hit this next goal, I don't know what I do after that. And that fear around that tends to be what causes me to go, I don't know if I'm ready for this. And so often when I commit to doing coaching, whether it's paid or unpaid, I have a friend who's very kind, and he'll say to me, hey, you've coached me a bit. How about if I coach you? And my first thought is, oh, this guy can help me get where I want to go. This is scary. What if I actually achieve my goal? Then I've got a new problem, a new set of circumstances. And I think that can be a very powerful deterrent. So rather than having that discussion with ourselves, I think the discussion is easier to say, it just costs too much. I can't afford that money. I see Aura's got a comment. What she got? Good morning, Aura. Good morning, she says. I love listening to you guys. Oh, I like that. Even when things are that I am aware I know is such a good reminder. Thank you. Have a beautiful weekend. Wow. That's it. I love that.
Well, and it's funny. I think thank you, Aura, for your comment. I think that's one of the things that I have found. I think one of the most oft-used statements, especially in my nonprofit work, from my clients is, I know that. Why am I not doing it? Or I can't figure out, like, why have I forgotten that this was an invaluable thing for me to do? And as I say to them, I said, the challenge is you're so in the middle of it, you can't see beyond that. And so it's easy to be like, oh yeah, this is a skill that I learned and I always did. And we usually had success when we did it. And then a lot of other things got in the way. And you come back and be like, I mean, I clearly remember one of the things I used to love to do was a conference I went to around fundraising and nonprofits had like a rookie session. So like for new people.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, like every other year or so, I would pop in there and just to remind myself that, oh yeah, there are all these very basic, simple things that we learn at some point. And as we grow, we think that all this other stuff has become more important. And then we go back and be like, yes, that is important. Why have I stopped doing these things that had such value? And then move forward. And I think that's so often is that we can't see it. because
You've
we're
brought
so
that to my attention several times in the last year.
well, you know,
At least several.
when
I
you
see
see it in
Michael's got
yourself,
two
it's
more
just,
comments.
yes,
Investing in identifying opportunities for growth helps keep an open mind open. And who knows, you might just stumble upon your next big breakthrough. The life of an inventor, or then he follows up, or should I say, a business owner. And I think the reality is every business owner is an inventor. If they're pursuing their renegade pathway towards whatever they're trying to do, you are inventing your process, your system, your way to approach the world so that you feel good about what you do and it rewards you in the way that you want to be rewarded. I think I think that ultimately, Tom, that's what coaching did for you, was really, hey, here are the tools I have that I come at uniquely, and here's the things that can support that, from a customer relation management software system to a process to, doing strategic plans. I didn't think I could do that, but lo and behold, I can. So I think that's a powerful case for why I would hope that someone watching this, listening to this, at least considers coaching, whatever that is, whether that's a paid coaching opportunity or someone saying, hey, I'd really like to help you get where you want to go. Can we sit down and talk about this over a 2-hour coffee session? Really looking at that and saying, you know what, it's worth the investment to have the expertise, the knowledge, the wisdom, the insights that lead us to those processes and systems that can be game changers for not just what we want to do, but if you think about it more powerfully, how you can influence the world.
no doubt. No doubt. It's about how do we, it's many times it allows you to share your value differently, which I think is anytime we can do that, we have the opportunity to have a greater impact on others around us. And I would offer that if somebody, if you're noodling through this and trying to figure out, like, how do I make sense of all of this, or what does it mean? I'm like, don't hesitate to put something in the chat, reach out to Bob or I, because we'd be happy to have a conversation around like, what does that look like for you? And yes, shamelessly plug, that's what we do. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we would necessarily be the correct coach for you. Could be, could not be. I think that one of the things we like is helping people figure out what their next step is, whatever
I
that
told
may be.
someone the other day that I was not the right coach for them.
Sometimes
It wasn't in my wheelhouse. I'm like, I love what you're doing, but I couldn't help you get there. And they were like, really? Yeah. And you and I both want someone to get what they need.
Of course, most important.
And we also know lots of other people that we can refer them to, which I think is a powerful tool in and of itself. That, most of my coaching has come from someone I've talked to saying, hey, this might be the person that fits what you're trying to do.
Correct. Especially if they're looking at something extremely specific, as we talked about earlier in the week. So that will wrap up our week.
And we do have something going on, Tom, in our Facebook group, right?
Yes, we do.
Do you want to mention that?
I'm happy to mention that. I
think that would be a lovely idea.
The Facebook group. So if you have comments or thoughts or ideas you'd like to share, please feel free to go to our Facebook group, especially if you're listening to the podcast, because we know there's no place to share it.
The Ring of Renegades Facebook group.
Give me a second. Getting there. You're anxious.
I am.
Yes, you can join us.
I had caffeine in my coffee. That's what it is.
Our Ring of Renegades Facebook group, where we're sharing our value and gaining value from others. And one of the things you'll notice when you go in there is that Bob and I have put up an opportunity that will last, a special opportunity, because we're launching a program that will help people figure out how to create their own unique strategies to build a system that works for them, so that they can have the confidence, like we've been able to do around our business, so they can figure out how to move forward, take their next steps, and achieve whatever the goal is that they have. And we're running a special on it now because it is a brand new launch, and that will be available until the 19th of April. And then once we've helped a few people, we'll move it along to whatever the next level is, so this opportunity won't be offered the same way again. So we encourage you to, if you're interested, if you think there's some value in that, think that you might want to learn more about it, there's plenty of information in the Facebook group, but also reach out to Bob or I. We'd be happy to talk to you a little bit about what that looks like and see if that might be a next step for you. to help you achieve whatever your big goal is this quarter. Because that's really what we want to help people do, is figure out how to take this big next step, create and carve a unique pathway for themselves so that they can sculpt the business that they desire or the leadership level that they desire. So again, if you want more information about that, don't hesitate to reach out to Bob or I. There'll be more information about it in the Facebook group over the next 6 days. So you can please feel free to comment on that or just reach out to us directly. With that, we hope that we will see you inside of that Facebook group, whether to learn about the offering we have or just to share your value, because we know that that might be what someone is desperately seeking. I mean, wouldn't it be great if you could be the one to provide that solution for them? So we look forward.
Hey, Tom, I'm going to give a little tease. I'm going to be doing a video later today about what I learned while I was building a stand-up desk last night.
Is it going to be a Facebook Live?
It's going to be a Facebook Live coming up
What
later
time?
today.
What time?
That's a good question. Let me say 11 o'clock Eastern time, a.m. today.
Okay.
In that Facebook Ring of Renegades Facebook group.
Fair enough. Look forward to. I mean, I'll have to check it out. I've got something at 11.
Oh, well, then let me make it noon.
Okay.
I want to make sure you can get there if you want to get there. But yeah, I was noodling through. I was having some trouble last night, and it occurred to me that this is symptomatic of a bigger issue.
Actually, my thing is at 10. Sorry about that. I made a mistake. So if you want to do it at 11, you can.
Okay, it'll be 11 a.m. Eastern time then.
Now that we cleared that up, make sure you're working around my schedule.
Hey, just so you know, we don't plan these things out. This is not a well-oiled machine. This is a.
There are some things that are very well planned out.
Are they?
Sometimes there are things that, like, I mean, how often do you build a stand-up desk? And how often do you?
Hopefully never again.
And oftentimes, until we're doing it, we don't realize the value of what it is.
Don't be giving all the thoughts away. I got some stand-up thoughts coming.
Sometimes it's hard to plan when we don't realize, until we just realize that, wow, that was something that that was valuable that I might want to share with somebody else. Anyhow. Yeah. All right, everybody. We look forward to seeing you inside that Facebook group. If not, we will see you Monday morning, 7 a.m. Eastern time for our next episode of today's Antidote. Go out and enjoy your day and your weekend.
Hey, embrace the renegading you today and every day. It's so worth it.
All right, everybody. We will see you soon. Thanks for listening to today's Antidote, powered by the Renegade Success Network. The Renegade Success Network helps you confidently create your own unique pathway to success. To learn more about the Renegade Success Network and how you can take your next step, follow us on Twitter, connect on LinkedIn, or join the Ring of Renegades Facebook group. For full details on how you can join our community, go to renegadesuccessnetwork.com. Embrace the renegade in you.